2:17 local time, Strait of Hormuz. The sea is flat, moonlight smeared into a dull silver band between the Omani coast and the dark outline of the Iranian shoreline. 16 oil tankers move in disciplined spacing through the outbound traffic lane, each one a slow, high-sided silhouette pushing a narrow wake at 12 knots. Ahead of them, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer holds station at 18 knots, slightly offset to port, its radar sweeping and its bridge lights dimmed. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air is cool and dry, screens washing everyone's faces in soft green. Most contacts are ordinary, merchant ships on predictable tracks, a few fishing dhows drifting along the separation zone, a coastal clutter line that never fully disappears. The watch is quiet enough that you can hear the faint click of a trackball and the low murmur of a supervisor reading a log entry. Then the surface picture twitches. A cluster of small returns appears at the edge of the radar gate, bearing 018, range 11.6 nautical miles. The operator leans in, adjusts the gain, and the returns sharpen instead of fading. Not one contact, not two. A string of them, tightly grouped, moving fast enough to leave long, bright streaks on the plot. Speed reads 41 knots. Course is not parallel to the shipping lane. It is converging. The supervisor steps behind the console and watches the vectors update. The computer calculates closest point of approach automatically. It flashes a number that doesn't match routine harassment. CPA 0.3 nautical miles. Time to CPA 16 minutes. On another console, the identification overlay tries to help. No AIS, no transponder, no commercial profile. Just small hulls running hard in the dark, coming out of the northern inshore zone, where the islands break radar line of sight. The supervisor doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. Mark those tracks. On the main display, each small return receives a track number, then a color change as the system recognizes intent based on geometry. A calm watch becomes a focused watch in the space of 10 seconds. The destroyer's tactical action officer steps closer to the large screen, bearing 018. Range 10.9 nautical miles, speed now 44 knots. 16 tankers behind them, each one too heavy to maneuver quickly inside a narrow lane. Each one worth more than the ship escorting it. Each one carrying a cargo that turns any collision into a disaster before the first shot is fired. A voice from the communication station breaks the quiet. Bridge, CIC, multiple high-speed surface contacts, no AIS, closing inbound lane. A pause, then the captain's voice returns, low and controlled. Understood. Bring the screen up. Condition 3. On the destroyer, Condition 3 is not panic. It is posture. Key stations manned. Weapons brought to ready states. The difference between a watch team and a combat team, without anyone running. The surface contact cluster splits. Not into 2 groups, into 4. 4 spearheads, each with 3 to 5 fast craft, spreading laterally, widening their approach so they can hit multiple targets at once. Their wakes begin to show faintly on infrared, on a white thread stitched into the black water. And for the first time, the threat is named, clean and short, on its own line in the CIC ramming swarm. 2:20 local time. The geometry tightens. The closest group is now bearing 026, range 8.4 nautical miles, still 43 knots. Another group is bearing 351, range 9.1. 2 more groups are angling in from 007 and 039, trying to bracket the convoy, trying to overwhelm the escort's ability to be everywhere at once. The tankers cannot scatter. The traffic lane is 2 miles wide, and outside it, the water is shallow enough to punish any large ship that tries to cut corners in the dark. Their helmsmen can only do small changes, slow changes, the kind that show up on radar too late. Inside CIC, the Tactical Action Officer takes the first step in the escalation ladder. Establish bridge to bridge. Hail all unknown contacts. Standard warning. The radio operator transmits on open maritime frequencies, then repeats on a second channel. Unidentified fast craft. This is United States Navy warship conducting escort operations in international waters. You are approaching a protected convoy at high speed. Alter course immediately. Maintain safe distance. The reply is not words. The reply is speed. One cluster surges from 43 knots to 47. Another drops slightly, then accelerates again, as if coordinating on a countdown only they can hear. The watch team starts calling numbers like a metronome. Closest group, range 7.6. Second group, range 8.0. Third group, range 8.3. Fourth group, range 9.2, accelerating. The captain steps into CIC and looks at the plot for 3 seconds. 16 merchant hulls, 4 inbound spearheads, 1 narrow lane, 1 destroyer, and the hardest part is that nothing is shooting yet, because ramming doesn't look like an attack until metal hits metal. The Tactical Action Officer doesn't wait for the impact. Launch the helo. On the aft deck, an MH-60R Seahawk is already spotted, rotors folded, crew strapped in. The hangar doors are open just enough to vent heat. The deck crew moves with rehearsed speed, silent signals under red light. Within 90 seconds, the helicopter lifts off, its rotor wash flattening the sea into a darker patch of water. Inside the Seahawk, the sensor operator flips to infrared and immediately sees what radar can't show cleanly. Crew on decks, no navigation lights. Some boats riding unusually low in the water, as if carrying weight forward. The pilot banks toward the closest spearhead, holding altitude at 300 feet, speed 120 knots, staying just outside small arms range until the rules of engagement become clear. Back in CIC, the captain gives the next step. Bring the forward gun to tracking, bring the .5s up. Keep it non-lethal until they force the line. Non-lethal, that word matters, because the convoy behind them is not a warship formation. It's civilian hulls with civilian crews, and every decision will be replayed later in courts, in ministries, in newsrooms, and in intelligence briefings. The range collapses again. Closest spearhead bearing 026. Range 6.2 nautical miles. Speed 46 knots. Time to intercept 8 minutes. And still no one can answer the question sitting under every number. Which tanker are they aiming for? 2:24 local time, when the first countdown loop begins in earnest. Range 5.8, 5.4, 5.1. Each call comes faster than the last. The watch supervisor's pen stops moving. Everyone is watching the same shrinking numbers, because fast boats don't need missiles. They only need a bow and momentum and a target that can't get out of the way. The Seahawk arrives overhead of the lead spearhead and drops lower, 200 feet, then 150. Its spotlight stays off. Its presence is enough. The pilot keys the radio. Iranian fast craft, you are approaching a protected convoy at unsafe speed. Alter course now. No reply. The boats do something worse. They tighten. Instead of spreading, 3 of them in the lead group slide closer together into a shallow wedge. Their wakes overlapping, their bows aligned as if they intend to strike the same point on a hull. A coordinated impact, a deliberate one. On the destroyer's bridge, the officer of the deck watches the convoy's lead tanker on the horizon, a black rectangle with a faint mast light. He knows the tanker's turning circle is measured in miles, not yards. He knows the tanker's rudder response is slow, not instant. He knows a fast craft at 45 knots can be on it before anyone finishes a sentence. Inside CIC, the tactical action officer issues the next step. Activate the dazzlers, LRAD ready. On the Seahawk, a green beam sweeps briefly across the lead craft's bridge windows. A laser dazzler, non-lethal but impossible to ignore. The helicopter holds position and repeats the warning. The boats don't turn away. They angle in harder. Range now 4.2 nautical miles. Time to collision 6 minutes. And the convoy's second tanker suddenly transmits a voice call, panicked and broken by static. Escort warship, this is merchant vessel on your stern. Small craft closing, bearing off our starboard bow. Request immediate assistance. The captain doesn't look away from the tactical screen. How many on that tanker? The liaison officer answers instantly. 24 crew, sir. The captain nods once. That nod is permission. The escalation ladder moves from deterrence to force. Authorize warning shots. Keep them ahead of the bows. Make it visible. On the destroyer's forward deck, the Mark 45 5-inch gun elevates a few degrees, aligns on a point of empty water 600 yards ahead of the lead wedge. The gun crew doesn't need to see the boats. The fire control system paints the solution. A single round leaves the barrel. It doesn't hit a ship, it hits the sea. A white column erupts into the air, taller than the boats themselves, a sudden wall of water in their path. In infrared, the splash is a bright flare. 2 boats hesitate. One doesn't. It punches through the spray, throttle still open, bow still pointed toward the tanker like a spear. In CIC, a short line lands like a weight. They're committed. 2:27 local time. The enemy's origin appears 15 minutes earlier, closer to shore. 1:12 local time, Iranian northern littoral. The water inside the island shadows is darker than the open strait, and the wave pattern is different, choppy, confused by currents and shallow depth. Under a low canopy light on a small concrete pier, engines idle on a line of fast inshore attack craft. Their crews are quiet, not talking, in checking straps and fuel lines and something else. Metal hooks and cables coiled in the bows. Inside a small command shed, a man in a headset listens to a coastal radar feed and a second encrypted channel. A map is taped to the wall with the outbound traffic lane traced in marker. 16 rectangles are drawn on the lane, 16 targets. The plan is not to sink them with weapons. It is to stop them with impact, to rupture one hull, to force the convoy to slow, then bunch up, to create chaos inside a narrow corridor where panic is more dangerous than bullets. A senior officer points at the rectangles. 2 on the lead pair, 2 on the middle, 1 on each of the rest. No firing unless fired upon. No firing, because the entire operation is designed to look like an accident until it isn't. The crews climb into their boats, and their engines rise to a higher pitch, but still not full. They wait for one final word. The officer lifts his hand and lowers it, and 12 boats slip off the pier and disappear into the island shadow, hugging the coast to stay under radar clutter, using the shoreline like cover. What they do not know is that earlier in the night, high above the strait, an unmanned aircraft has already been watching, not with a spotlight, with a wide, silent eye. Its feed has already been pushed to the destroyer's combat system, their routes, their staging point, their timing, And when they accelerate into the open, they will be giving away something they cannot take back. Intent 2:29 local time. Back in the destroyer's CIC, the engagement is now too close to stay polite. Range 3.6 nautical miles. For 3.2, 2.9. The lead wedge is now less than 5 minutes from the tanker's hull at their current closure rate, and the tanker's bow wave is visible on infrared like a pale smear. The captain speaks once. "General quarters." The alarm doesn't sound like fear, it sounds like procedure. A sharp tone through steel passageways, the ship tightening itself into readiness. Watertight doors cycle. Sailors move fast, but controlled. The guns have already been tracking. Now, they are fully armed. The Seahawk drops lower, 120 feet, positioning itself between the lead craft and the tanker. Its door gunner doesn't fire. He doesn't need to. He paints the lead craft again with the dazzler and then keys the loudspeaker. "Alter course now." The lead craft doesn't alter, it surges on the destroyer. The captain makes the next step unavoidable. Disable the lead boat. That single decision changes everything, because now the goal is not to warn, it is to stop. On the starboard side, a Mark 38 25mm gun mount slews, its operator watching a stabilized camera feed. The crosshair settles on the lead craft's outboard engine. Range 2,400 yards, 2,100, 1,800. The gun opens fire in short, controlled bursts, not a stream, not a spray. Precise cuts of metal. Rounds strike the engine housing, the craft's wake staggers, its bow dips. For a second it keeps going, momentum carrying it forward, and then the engine dies, and the boat slews sideways, carving a half circle as it loses thrust. But behind it, the second boat slides left. The third slides right. They were never depending on one engine. They were depending on mass. In CIC, the tactical action officer's voice sharpens. Multiple spearheads still inbound. Second wave is adjusting. Range 2.2 nautical miles. Time to collision, 3 minutes. The boats are close enough now that even small changes in angle are readable as intent, and the intent is not to pass by. It is to hit. The destroyer commands the convoy. Convoy, execute emergency spacing, increase separation, lead pair, rudder 5 degrees to starboard, maintain lane. A tanker cannot turn 5 degrees like a fighter jet, but it can try, and trying matters. The lead tanker's bow begins a slow, reluctant shift. Its wake bends slightly. The smallest change in geometry buys yards, then seconds, then maybe the difference between a glancing strike and a direct hit. The fast craft keep coming. Range 1.6 nautical miles, 1.3. The first micro cliffhanger lands at the end of a breath. Are they carrying charges? 2:32 local time. The layered defense becomes a layered surface fight. Layer 1 is awareness. The Seahawk feeds video into CIC, tagging boats by hull shape and deck load. Layer 2 is soft control. Loud hails, dazzlers, warning splashes, a helicopter holding the airspace low enough that any boat crew can see the silhouette above them and understand what it means. Layer 3 is hard stop. Disabled engines, broken steering, boats forced to drift instead of strike. The Mark 38 fires again, this time on a second craft. Range 900 yards. The burst walks across the stern. The boat's wake collapses into froth and then disappears as it slows hard. Crew silhouettes jump, hands up or scrambling for something that looks like a hook. On the Seahawk, the sensor operator zooms tighter and sees it clearly. A metal grappling frame welded to the bow, a cable spool, not just ramming, boarding, clamping, attaching. CIC Hilo. They've got bow frames, looks like attachment gear. The captain's eyes don't move, but his tone changes. Limpets? The Hilo crew doesn't guess. They report what they can prove. Unknown payload capability, but the gear is deliberate. In CIC, the surface picture suddenly flashes another alert. Not the boats, not the tankers. A radar emission spike from the North Shore. A narrow beam, short dwell time, repeating. The electronic warfare operator leans in. Possible coastal targeting radar, bearing 346 relative, range estimate 18 to 22 nautical miles. The boats are a distraction. That realization hits the room in silence. Because if the escort is pulled into a close-in surface brawl, the convoy becomes an easy geometry problem for something launched over the horizon. The tactical action officer asks the question no one wants to hear. Are we about to get a missile on top of this? 2:34 local time? The first inbound boat reaches the convoy. Not the lead tanker, the fourth. A smaller product tanker with a higher speed capability, trying to widen spacing. The boat comes in at a shallow angle, aiming not for the bow, but for the tanker's starboard quarter near the propeller line, where damage is most disabling. Range from the tanker's hull, 300 yards, 200, 150. The tanker's horn blares, low and desperate. The Seahawk dives to 80 feet, its rotor wash flattening the boat's spray. The door gunner tracks the bow frame, sees a crewman lean forward with a hook. The gunner fires a short burst into the water beside the boat, a last warning measured in yards. The boat doesn't veer, it accelerates, and then the destroyer's captain gives the order that ends ambiguity. Engage to protect the merchant hull. A 25mm burst strikes the boat's bow frame. Metal fragments fly. The frame crumples. The boat slams sideways into the tanker anyway, but not with the point of a spear, with a shoulder. A glancing blow that scrapes paint and throws a wall of spray. The tanker shudders. The cargo ship crewman on deck drops to one knee, but the hull holds. No rupture, no spill. The boat rebounds, half swamped by its own impact, and begins to drift. On CIC's main display, the surface brawl is still red, because that was only one boat. 3 more are within a mile. Range 0.9 nautical miles, 0.7, 0.5. Time to collision, 90 seconds. Countdown loop 2 begins, faster and tighter now. 0.5, 0.4, 0.3. The destroyer's guns fire in controlled arcs, disabling engines, shredding steering linkages, punching holes low enough to flood, but not necessarily explode. Boats slow, spin, drift. Some continue under momentum, and those are the most dangerous, because a boat with no engine can still hit like a thrown rock at 40 knots if it's already committed. One craft slips through the gaps. It aims for a different target, a tanker in the middle of the line. It's smaller, faster, and it's running dark. In the Seahawk's infrared, its deck looks empty. Too empty, which means something is covered, or something is inside. The Hilo crew calls it out. CIC, one runner, bearing 012 from convoy centerline. Speed 45 knots. Range 0.8 nautical miles. It's going for the middle tanker. The destroyer's 25mm can't traverse fast enough through the convoy geometry without risk to the merchant hull. The captain makes a different decision. Use the Hilo. Stop it. The Seahawk banks hard, lines up, and the door gunner fires a tight burst, aiming not for the crew, but for the wake line just ahead of the bow. forcing the driver to choose between collision and a sudden turn. The boat turns just enough. It misses the tanker by 40 yards, but it doesn't run away. It circles back, and that is when it happens. A single sentence appears in the electronic warfare operator's voice, flat and professional. Missile launch detected, North Shore, bearing 346. The room goes still, because now there are two fights, one measured in yards, one measured in seconds, the 2:36 local time. The inbound missile track appears as a thin red vector on the composite display, born from a coastal battery beyond the curve of the Earth. The first radar detection is late by design. Sea-skimming threats are built to stay under radar horizon until the last possible moment. Range 21 nautical miles, speed high subsonic. Time to impact, 95 seconds. The destroyer's Aegis system shifts posture without drama. Tracking becomes engagement. Weapon status lights change from ready to armed. The tactical action officer calls the geometry. Vampire inbound, bearing 346. Range 20.4 nautical miles, altitude low. The captain doesn't shout. Engage! On the destroyer's forward deck, a vertical launch cell opens with a metallic snap. A standard missile ignites and climbs hard, a bright spear into the dark, and then rolls and drives toward the horizon. Another follows 2 seconds later. Redundancy, because one interceptor is a plan and two is doctrine. Range to intercept point calculates automatically. Missile inbound, 16 nautical miles. Time to impact, 70 seconds. And still, the surface fight continues below it, because boats can still ram while missiles fly overhead. The Seahawk climbs to 500 feet to clear the engagement envelope, then circles back downwind, still feeding infrared to CIC. On the convoy net, a tanker master's voice comes through, shaking. We have small craft alongside. They are attempting to attach something. Repeat, attempting to attach. That is the third fight. Not ramming, attachment. A limpet charge doesn't need to sink a tanker in open water. It only needs to detonate in a narrow strait. Forcing traffic to stop, forcing salvage operations, forcing a political narrative before any facts are checked. In CIC, the captain makes the decision to split action. Surface team, continue disabling craft. Air defense, stay on the Vampire. Helo, identify attachment attempts. The destroyer's guns fire again, short bursts, surgical. 2 more boats lose engines. One flips, its bow digging into a wake. A second takes on water and stops dead, drifting broadside, crew scrambling, but one boat is already tight to a tanker's starboard side, using the tanker's bulk as cover from the escort's direct line of fire. The Seahawk drops low again, 100 feet, and the sensor operator zooms. A crewman is leaning out with a pole. At the end of the pole is a flat, dark disc, magnetic. The operator speaks carefully. Impossible limpet device. The convoy master's voice hardens. Get them off. 2:37 local time. The missile countdown tightens. Range 12 nautical miles. Time to impact, 45 seconds. The destroyer's second layer comes online. Electronic warfare. Jamming rises in the spectrum, invisible to the eye but loud in the electromagnetic sense, designed to break a seeker's lock or degrade its ability to discriminate a target among sea clutter and decoys. The tactical action officer calls it out. Sea whip active, jamming bearing 346. The missile doesn't care about jamming at first. It keeps coming. Range 9 nautical miles, impact in 30 seconds. The destroyer's close-in defenses spool to readiness, the last layer waiting for the moment when everything else has failed. On the surface, the Seahawk decides it cannot shoot the boat alongside the tanker without risking the tanker's crew on deck. Instead, it uses force in a different way. Downwash. The helicopter drops to 50 feet and hovers directly over the boat. Rotor wash, hammering the water into a violent spray. The small craft pitches hard. The crewman with the pole loses balance. The disc slaps the tanker's hull and then falls away, splashing into the water instead of sticking. The Seahawk's crew marks the splash point. Object in the water, marking position. In CIC, the captain's voice remains level. Log it, GO it. Because even a failed attachment is evidence. Range 6 nautical miles, impact in 18 seconds. The jamming intensifies. The missile's track wobbles slightly. A small deviation that means its seeker is seeing ghosts. But it is still inbound, and the interceptors are now close enough that the entire engagement becomes a single timing problem. Intercept in 5, 4, 3. A bloom appears on radar. One inbound track disappears, but a second inbound track flashes into existence behind it, lower, tighter to the water, as if the coastal battery fired a staggered salvo, using the first missile to draw interceptors and the second to slip through the timing gap. The reveal lands in a short paragraph, alone, because that's how it hits in the room. Second missile, range 8.2 nautical miles, time to impact 26 seconds, 2:38 local time. The third countdown loop begins with no room to breathe. 8.2, 7.4, 6.6. The destroyer's ESSM battery is ready for this exact geometry. Shorter range, faster reaction. The tactical action officer doesn't wait for debate. On shift to ESSM, engage second Vampire. A launch cell opens. The ESSM leaps out and drives low, guided by the ship's fire control radar, in a tight engagement cone designed for sea skimmers. The missile keeps coming. Range 4.8 nautical miles. Impact in 15 seconds. On deck, the close-in weapon system tracks, not firing yet, waiting until the last possible moment to avoid fratricide with the interceptor. In CIC, nobody speaks, because the numbers are speaking. Range 3.6, 3.0, 2.4. Impact in 8 seconds. Then the ESSM meets it. A hard flash over the water. The radar bloom is brief. Fragments scatter into the sea. The track vanishes, and the room does not celebrate, because the surface fight still isn't done, and because the twist was the point. The coastal battery revealed itself, and the moment it fired, it gave away something priceless. Its exact emission pattern, its launch timing, its radar fingerprint. Now the escort force has a location problem to solve, and solving location problems is what networks do best. The captain looks at the tactical display and speaks one sentence, clean and final on its own line. Neutralize the command node. 2:40 local time. The posture flips from defense to hunt. The destroyer's combat system draws bearing lines backward from the missile tracks, intersecting with the earlier radar emission spike. The solution is not perfect, but it narrows the search to a coastal sector with one small island and a strip of mainland behind it. The Seahawk climbs to 1,000 feet, swings north, and begins scanning with its sensors toward the shoreline. The infrared picture shows heat signatures along the coast that don't match fishing activity. Vehicles clustered near a flat clearing, a faint rectangular shape that could be a launcher or a radar dish. On the surface, 2 fast craft attempt to flee south, away from the convoy, running hard at 38 knots, now that they've lost the element of surprise. Another craft drifts, disabled, crew waving a white cloth. One more is still dangerously close to the tankers, circling as if looking for another chance to attach something. The The destroyer cannot chase everything at once, but it can assign. Surface action, prosecute runners. Halo, continue ISR on coast. Convoy, maintain lane, increase separation to 1,200 yards. The destroyer accelerates to 28 knots, sliding to the convoy's threatened side like a shield that can move. A second U.S. asset joins the picture overhead, a fighter on station farther out, pushed in by the network now that the coastal battery has shown itself. The fighter doesn't fire. It doesn't need to. Its presence is a locking mechanism on the airspace. The surface hunt begins with the closest, most immediate threats. A fleeing craft at bearing 112, range 2.8 nautical miles, speed 38 knots. The Mark 38 tracks and fires again. A burst cuts the wake. The craft's stern drops. Its speed collapses to 12 knots, then to 0. It drifts, dead in the water, and the crew's hands go up. The second runner tries to weave between merchant hulls, using the tankers as cover. But that geometry works both ways. A fast boat that tries to hide among slow, predictable ships has fewer escape routes. Its options shrink with every mile marker. The destroyer's rigid hull boarding team is ready, not launched yet, because the area still contains a possible limpet device in the water, marked by the Seahawk. Divers will handle that later. For now, the priority is to remove the boats that can still hit something. A third craft makes a final desperate move, aiming at a tanker's bow, hoping to force it to slow and bunch the line. The destroyer's 5-inch gun doesn't fire a warning this time. It fires a disabling shot into open water so close that the shock and spray slam into the boat's hull. The boat turns away, not because it wants to, because the sea around it has become a wall. In CIC, the tactical action officer asks the question that matters now. Do we have the coastal node fixed? The Seahawk answers with data, not confidence. Possible radar vehicle and launcher array, bearing 344 from convoy center. Range estimate 19 nautical miles. Heat signatures consistent with recent launch. That is enough, because the goal is not revenge, it's denial. A coastal battery that can shoot and then reposition is a future threat. A coastal battery that is forced to shut down, relocate, and go silent is a threat removed from the board without firing a single shot at land. The destroyer transmits the coordinates across the network for intelligence exploitation and follow-on tracking, then shifts back to the convoy, because the convoy is the mission, and the mission is now to leave the strait intact. 2:46 local time. The water settles back into its earlier pattern, but the scene is different. Disabled fast craft drift in the wake lines like dark debris. One tanker bears a long scrape along its starboard side, paint stripped down to metal, but its speed holds steady at 12 knots. No distress siren, no flooding report, no sheen on the water that would indicate a cargo breach. The Seahawk circles once more over the splash point where the magnetic disk fell. A small team is already preparing to deal with it, not with drama, with procedure. A remotely operated vehicle will inspect. Divers will recover if safe, every step recorded. Inside CIC, the captain watches the tactical display turn from red to yellow to blue as tracks are downgraded, disabled, detained, or withdrawing. He speaks quietly. Stand down from general quarters. Maintain condition 3 until clear of the choke point. The convoy keeps moving, because stopping is exactly what the ramming plan wanted. Your 2 boarding teams are launched once the immediate surface threat is gone. They approach the disabled craft carefully, weapons trained, lights controlled. The crews on the boats are searched, restrained, and separated. A waterproof handheld device is found under a seat. Rugged casing, external antenna, encrypted burst transmitter, a signature, a command link, the very thing that coordinated the spearheads and timed the coastal salvo. On the destroyer, it is handled like evidence, not like a trophy. Bagged, labeled, shielded, and logged, 3:11 local time. The convoy exits the highest risk segment of the strait and begins to feel the sea widen beneath it. The radar horizon expands. The lane opens into deeper water, where the tankers will have room to maneuver if they ever have to. The Seahawk returns to the destroyer and lands with a controlled hover, wheels touching deck like nothing unusual happened. The crew steps out, helmets off, faces tired and focused. No one speaks loudly. They don't need to. The camera feeds and sensor logs already captured the story in a format that can't be argued with. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tactical display returns to the calm rhythm of merchant traffic moving along predictable lines. The last hostile track is now a drifting symbol with a speed of 0 knots, guarded by a small blue icon that represents a boarding team. The intelligence officer begins the closing sequence in the log. Time of first detection, bearing and range, speed, time to first warning, time to first disabling fire, time and bearing of coastal radar emission, missile launch times, intercept times, sea skimmer altitude estimate, electronic warfare activation, object drop attempt alongside a tanker, marked splash point, recovery planned. Every entry time-stamped, geolocated, cross-referenced with sensor files and voice recordings. Because this is what the incident really produced. Not a headline, a data set, a fingerprint, a clearer picture of how the pressure tactic is built. Ramming craft as the close-in chaos, a coastal battery as the over-the-top threat, and a narrow strait as the trap. The captain signs the final line with his voice, not for theater, but because it matters. Convoy secure. Strait transit continued. Hostile attempt deterred and disrupted. Evidence captured. Outside, the sea looks unchanged. A dark, calm surface stretching into the pre-dawn horizon, as if nothing happened, except wakes dissolving behind slow ships. But beneath that calm is the reality every sailor in that CIC understands. The next attempt won't look exactly like this one. It never does. If you want the next incident file, subscribe. The strait stays quiet until it doesn't.